We've been told that it's indulgent. We've been told we're too old for it. We've been told it's something that is a reward. If you get everything else done, then you can play. Then you can do those things that fill you up, that light you up. And of course, the reality is that so many of us, our lives are so full that we don't ever get to indulge in those things. And it's just like rest. We put it off until, right? I'll rest when, I'll play when, and that when never comes. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Áine, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Áine, and I am here today with a solo episode for you, all about the energies of summer solstice, some of the mythology surrounding this moment in the wheel of the year, and a little invitation for you based on what we are currently diving into in the month of June in the Wise Wild Woman Mentorship Program. Welcome. Summer solstice is upon us already, that brightest, longest day of the year, also known as Midsummer, because for the ancient Celts and for much of ancient agricultural Europe, this represented the height of summer, the middle of the summer months. For the Celtic peoples, Bealtaine is the beginning of summer, back at the beginning of May. And after midsummer, the light begins to fade, so it makes sense that this would be considered the peak of summer. Of course, the warmest months are yet to come. The harvest has not begun, but when we hit harvest season around the beginning of August, that is actually when autumn begins. Autumn is harvest season. And I really love the way that this kind of gentle shift makes sense in my body. For the way that the wheel turns, the way that the seasons ebb and flow. And one of the teachings that I've been really leaning into lately is that the seasons aren't definite, right? Some years, summer comes late. Some years, winter comes early. And the light is what really anchors me into the moment. And so tuning in to what's happening in the land, the growth, the decay is all really important. And for me, the light is a really big marker. Summer solstice has a lot of light. The word solstice comes from the Latin solstitium, which means the sun stands still. And so for 3 days around the solstices, both winter and summer, we have this sense of the sunlight being the same amount of sunlight for 3 days running, right? The sun is standing still for 3 days. We don't notice that shift before it tips back either towards brightness or towards darkness. In some of the Celtic mythology, we have this never-ending battle between the Oak King, who is the king of summer, and the Holly King, the king of winter. And depending on where you're finding your sources, and I've found this to be conflicting a little bit, but I like going with this version. So I'm going to share this version. Basically, they battle. They battle either twice a year or they're locked in battle throughout the year. And at certain points of the year, one prevails or triumphs over the other. And so in this mythology, the Oak King And the Holly King battled at Yule, at winter solstice, in the deepest dark of night, and the Oak King prevailed, and thus the light began to lengthen. And it lengthened, and it lengthened, and it lengthened, and then here we are arriving at summer solstice, and the scales have to tip, the balance has to tip. We cannot continue to have more and more and more light. It's not sustainable, it's finite. This feels like a metaphor. And so at summer solstice, when the heat of the battle peaks, the Holly King wins. And from the next day onwards, the night begins to grow a little bit longer each turn of the earth. And so we start to move back slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, towards the dark half of the year again. In some mythologies, you'll see that this battle happens or one or the other of them wins at the equinoxes, but to me, it really makes sense at the peaks, at those moments where we've gone so far one way or the other that balance needs to be restored. Summer solstice energy is bright. It's loud in some ways. It's creative. It's playful. It's full of potential. It's about being out and active in the world. It's mirrored in the energy of full moon. So that creativity, that really almost buzzy energy, right? Sometimes we're often not getting as much sleep at this time of year because it's so light, especially if you're in further northern parts of the world. And again, I'm speaking to those in the northern hemisphere right now. If you are in the southern hemisphere, everything is opposite. And you may find more relevance searching back through my episodes for the winter solstice episode. But I'm going to speak to summer solstice because that's where I am rooted. And so, we're not getting as much sleep. The light is getting really short where I live. We get maybe 4 full hours of darkness once the sun sets and it gets fully dark before the first light of dawn starts to grace the horizon again. So sleeping less, the birds and the animals are out and active longer. There is this energy, this sense of wanting to be out in the world, connecting with our friends, with neighbors, with activities, outdoor pastimes. There's also that real excitement piece of, kids have wrapped up school and there's like that draw to go outside. I'm recording this from the very beginning of June. And so I have this sense of like remembering how exciting those last weeks of school were because you just wanted to go be outside and not be stuck in the classroom anymore. And so there's that sense here. And there's a mother energy to this time as well. If we're thinking about the seasons and the way that they carry the energies of the different phases of our lives. Spring, Imbolc, is maiden energy. Summer, so Bealtaine, where we are in the middle of right now, is that mother energy, creative, sensual, connective, nurturing in a lot of ways. Then we move towards the matriarch energy in the fall, and finally that cronehood, the wisdom years energy in the winter. And so this moment, this peak of fertility, of abundance, the crops aren't in, the harvest hasn't begun, but the flowers are blooming or have bloomed. The fruits are beginning to swell on the vines, right? We've got this really lush, sensual, creative energy happening. Solstice energy also carries themes of self-love, of growth, of healing, of protection. And we can't forget that it's also a time of fairy magic. It is a time when the Tuatha Dé Danann, the ancient tribes of Ireland who in time became the fairies, that's who we are referring to when we talk about fairies in mythology. They're not like little people. They are the fair folk, or the good folk, and they were the ancient mythological races of, or tribes of Ireland. And at this time of year, that veil is thin again. And so there's kind of 3 main points on the wheel where we hear or we read about this idea that the veil is extra thin, or that the distinction between our world and the other world, the ease in which we can cross from one to the other and vice versa, is increased, is heightened. And so you think about cultural nods to this, like in Shakespeare's play, A Midsummer Night's Dream. That's happening at the summer solstice, right? That's midsummer. And the fairies are out to play. And so this is something that has been woven into culture and history. And so it's a time again to appease the fae folk, to protect ourselves from them, to just be conscious that maybe we don't wander off into mist-shrouded hills and lose our way and stumble into the other world. While midsummer does fall in the bright half of the year, the masculine half of the wheel on the Celtic Wheel of the year, the sun itself is a feminine noun in Irish and I believe in other Gaelic languages. And there's kind of this fluidity between feminine and masculine. Again, it's mother energy, it's ovulation energy, and it's also bright masculine energy. And so there's always this interplay, this balance back and forth with all of the points on the wheel. It's all about balance. And so even though one type of energy, in this case masculine energy, is where we are sitting on the whole wheel, the other is present still, right? The feminine still belongs and still is present. And we have two deities who are associated with this time who kind of capture again this duality, the fluidity between feminine and masculine, and the need to find balance. And so we have Áine, who is a sun goddess of the Tuatha Dé Danann. She very well may be a name for the original mother goddess, the goddess Danu, who was the great mother goddess of the Tuatha Dé Danann. And we have Lugh, the shining one. And we're going to talk a lot more about Lugh at Lunasa, which gets its name from him, even though the celebrations are actually in honor of his foster mother. But both these deities are present with us. So Áine, again, has this primordial mother energy, a sun goddess, a bright star. And because the fairies were once the Tuatha Dé Danann, right? They are these descendants of the gods and goddesses of Ireland. The idea of Áine, one of her epithets is the fairy queen. And so it makes sense that if she is the queen of the fairies, the queen of the Tuatha, she was their sun god or their mother goddess. And so perhaps she was not of the Tuatha, she was their deity. And we see some of this coming up, but we don't have a ton of good, hard, cold, historical fact knowledge around this. So much of it was passed on orally. So much of it is translated through Christian monks who came into Ireland and were translating things and writing things down with their own lens, right? And so a lot of my information, a lot of what I share with you about deities is coming from Jen Murphy of the Celtic Creatives. So go check her out. She's a wealth of wisdom. I want to give credit where credit is due. One of the things that Lugh is known for, and again, this comes up at Lunasa when games and feats of strength and artistic things were done. It was like a big festival with like lots of competitions and things. But he was considered to be a many-skilled, Lugh the many-skilled. And so we see this kind of in midsummer energies, playfulness, games. There's this creativity here, right? And so it's a beautiful time to tap into your own creative energies. And so that's what I want to speak to a little bit today. That's what I want to tie this episode to. So we've talked a little bit about the history, a little bit about the mythology. If you are interested to go a bit deeper on the mythology, hear some more of the stories of Áine, of Lugh, of some of the traditions that were associated with summer solstice and ways that you might celebrate, then I would invite you to come join us for the summer solstice ceremony that will be happening on June 19th. I'd like to share some words with you from a Wheel of the Year ceremony participant. Kelly writes, "When I was first invited to a Wheel of the Year ceremony, I thought it was another event to make time for in my calendar, another thing I had to do. After participating in a ceremony, I realized I had not been invited to an event. I had been invited into a way of being. Áine creates a space that momentarily suspends the relentless demands of our culture to invite in the subtle forces that bring healing, rejuvenation, and joy. I no longer feel that I have to make time for these invitations because they allow me to create it. And this is exactly what these ceremonies are. 8 times a year at each turn of the wheel, I gather women together to mark the shifting seasons. Not on the calendar, but in our bodies, in our energy, in our lives. These circles are a place to exhale, to remember that you are also nature and that your body already knows what this season is asking of you. They are a place to be witnessed and to reconnect with yourself, with the earth, and with other women who are walking the path. If you've been feeling the pull towards something more intentional, a different way of moving through the year, I'd love to have you join us. You can find all the details and upcoming ceremony dates at myluminous-life.ca/wheel-of-the-year-ceremonies. I hope to see you there. Link will be below in the show notes as always. Back to the episode. For the rest of today's episode, I want to touch on the topic of play. Because as I mentioned at the very beginning, I wanted to bring this topic in that we are working with, dancing with, weaving with inside of the Wise Wild Woman Mentorship Program this month. If you're curious about that mentorship program, reach out. Doors are open. And the idea or the topic of play came up for me as I sat in meditation to prepare for what is June going to bring us. And this was born out of May's conversations around stepping into our power, claiming our desires, indulging in pleasure. And I started to think about play and how hard it is for so many of us as adults to play. And then I started to think about and read about, all of the benefits of play. We have loads of science starting to back up the fact that play is not only, enjoyable, but it's essential for us. It is innate to all mammals. It's part of how our brains are wired. And the research is beginning to show that it's like this fundamental biological, physiological, and social mechanism that shapes how we learn, adapt, connect, and thrive across our lifespans. And I pulled that from the National Institute for Play. We have studies showing that it decreases rates of depression, of anxiety, that it increases cognitive abilities, increases connection between people. It can actually help prevent and help us heal from burnout, which is huge because rates of burnout are on the rise. They affect women disproportionately to men. And we're here talking about rest so often. And rest is important. But without play, we may not actually be able to rest. This is an unfinished thought that just came through. But there is, research around how play allows us to tap into joy, to creativity, to fulfillment, and it allows us to engage in rest. And when we think about play as adults, as adult women, how many of us here are firstborn daughters who were potentially parentified at a young age? How many of us here were creatives who were told that our art was not serious and that we needed to pursue something practical? How many of us here were ridiculed for playing beyond when it was deemed appropriate? I'm thinking right now of this memory I have of being in middle school. So I was probably in grade 5 or 6. And my friend and I loved to play pretend that we were dogs at lunch, especially in the snow. It was so much fun when a big dump of snow would come out and we'd get our snowsuits on and we'd go and we'd run around on our hands and knees and just have a grand old time. And I remember it wasn't even an adult. It was another child, which is even more tender. but she made fun of us. She called us babies. And I remember feeling so embarrassed and ashamed. Also angry because I was having so much fun. I was so in the moment, and it was this sudden wave of all of a sudden, this thing that had brought me so much pleasure was now something to be embarrassed about, to hide, to do in secret. And yet I couldn't enjoy it the same way after that. And so it's these little moments, these things that happen to us, the offhand comment from another kid, from an adult, you're too old for that. How many of you remember being too old to go trick-or-treating? It wasn't about the candy for me by the end. It was the getting dressed up, the play, the make-believe, the fun. But we're slowly conditioned to believe that play is for kids, or that play is for when you are finished all the things you need to do. Right? It's a reward. And play as adults doesn't look the same as play as kids. Play as adults is creativity. Maybe you paint or draw or play an instrument. Maybe you dance. Maybe you garden, right? Maybe you bake and come up with wild concoctions in the kitchen that maybe aren't always delicious because you're playing and there's failure involved in play. Play can look like activities that are restorative, right? It doesn't have to be outgoing and active and, the way that we think of when we think about play. It's just something that's done for its own sake. There's not a productivity quota attached to it. It's fun, it's light, it sparks joy. It's okay to mess up because you're not doing it to create an output. You're not doing it to be productive. You're doing it for the joy of doing it and engaging in it. And this is something that so many of us struggle to allow ourselves to do, and it's many faceted. So we've been told that it's indulgent. We've been told we're too old for it. We've been told it's something that is a reward. If you get everything else done, then you can play. Then you can do those things that fill you up, that light you up. And of course, the reality is that so many of us, our lives are so full that we don't ever get to indulge in those things. Or even when we've ticked off most of the things on our list for the day, there's still things, I could get ahead. I don't know. It feels like I'm not succeeding or not doing the things I should be doing. I'm not where I thought I should be by this point of my life. I can't play until I get there. And it's just like rest. We put it off until, right? I'll rest when, I'll play when, and that when never comes. And so that's part of it. And another big part of it, and I suspect this is true for men and women, but I know it's especially true for women who've been conditioned to believe that their lovability, their worthiness is dependent on how much they can sacrifice for others, how useful they are to others, how much they can shrink themselves down and make their own needs smaller so that others feel good, how much they can take care of others' needs before our own, right? The good girl. Well, to indulge in something as frivolous as play when there might be people to tend to is downright scary for a nervous system that has learned that love is conditional, that worthiness is conditional on our productivity, our usefulness, our ability to put ourselves last. And so play can feel unsafe. Again, we keep coming back to that over and over. This idea of creating safety in our nervous systems in order to be able to engage in the activities that create a depth-filled, meaningful, and abundant life, a life in which we get to thrive, not just survive. And so why am I bringing this all here at this time of the year? I want to loop us back to summer solstice because this is important. I think, again, our bodies at this time of year have a memory of play because, as I mentioned, school is letting out, right? As kids, there is a memory, and I know that not everybody's summers were this utopia. Mine were pretty utopian, but I know that that's not true for everyone. But there was still this sense of the dissolving of the rigidity of the structure of school, right? There was no homework. there was no, I have to be at school at 8 a.m. and sit my butt in a chair till 3:30 p.m. Like, that's a long time to sit still. There was the ability to sleep more, especially as we got older and needed more sleep in our teenage years. There was the ability to be outside as much as we wanted. There was the ability to get lost in that kind of play for hours and hours on end, day after day, right? And so at this time of year, our bodies remember. I think it's why we make more plans. We want to be outside more. It is more beautiful. The weather is nicer than in December. We are naturally socially oriented at this time of year because of the energies. And so it's a beautiful time of year to start practicing weaving in some play. And as with everything, it doesn't have to be huge, right? You don't need to block off 3 hours a day to go be whimsical, although if you can, please do. But it might be in something as simple as putting on your favorite song and having a goofy dance as you make your coffee in the morning. It might be something as simple as grabbing your colors or your kids' colored pencils or markers and like doodling with the intention of burning it after or throwing, it's not supposed to be pretty. It's just supposed to be fun. Let yourself get messy. Maybe you get finger paints going and you just make a mess. Maybe you go to the plant shop and you indulge in some extra plants to create some beautiful planters for your deck. Any of these things that fuel your creativity, that spark joy, can you weave little moments of them in? Can you not just allow yourself to play, but to prioritize it? Can you challenge yourself to have a play session before you do the chore, right? The dishes need to get done. Cool. I'm going to go put my hands in the dirt for 20 minutes before I do that. I'm going to go paint a picture before I do that. I'm going to pick up my guitar and play 3 songs before I do that. It's not shirking responsibility, but it's fueling you up and bringing your body into alignment with the energetics of the season itself. And if you can play with friends, find an activity that feels playful and joyful and communal, connective, even better. When we can connect with other beings in this energy, we offer each other's nervous systems safety. And we strengthen our ability to play. Okay, I am wishing each and every one of you a blessed summer solstice, this bright peak moment of the year. I hope that you get to fully enjoy it, suck the marrow out of the juices of this moment, of this time. I would love to see you in ceremony if you're catching this episode before we have our ceremony. If you've missed it, there'll be another ceremony. Lunasa is just around the corner. And as always, if you have any questions, if this episode sparked anything for you, I would love to hear what happens in your body when you think about play, what comes up, what stories, what beliefs, limiting or otherwise, what's there, what's alive for you. Come find me over on Instagram at I am Aileen March, in my email, Aileen@MyLuminousLife. As always, there'll be links below in the show notes to join us for the summer solstice ceremony, to grab my book, to take the Which Are You quiz. All of those ways to connect are going to be below. And I will be back here with you again, same time next week. Bye for now.